What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. So, guys, wanted to talk about a particular topic here that, could generate some interest. I wouldn't necessarily look too deep into it, but you never know when it comes to these particular situations. And with the way, if things were to shape up for the Indianapolis Colts the way that we think it could in this draft class, maybe this would not be such a really bad idea for Indianapolis to entertain. So obviously, the Carolina Panthers jumped to the number one overall pick, taking Chicago's pick, and now Chicago moved back to number 9. So we know for a fact that the Carolina Panthers will be taking a quarterback. And there's been recent reports stating that Houston is really only set on one quarterback, particularly on Bryce Young. Now, that's not 100% fact, but from what we've heard is a lot of people seem to think that's the way they want to go. Now, we have heard over the last few weeks, or over the last few days rather, that the Houston Texans have been actively listening to trade offers for that number 2 overall pick. So leading to the understanding that the Houston Texans might not actually be all in on a quarterback. They may not be all in on one of these guys. And that opens up the understanding of what if the Colts want to potentially trade up for them? We've heard that the Schefter has said on NFL Live and a few other places that, there could be a situation where Indianapolis might be the next team to choose a quarterback at pick number 2 or 3, if indeed the other two teams don't trade out and want to just go with the picks that they have. So, and none of them want to take quarterback. Now, we obviously know Arizona most likely will not take one, but Houston's still up for grabs at this point. We don't know how they feel about the whole rest of the group. So when it comes to that, first things first, if you're Indianapolis, trading up to number 2 might be a option that you could consider, given the fact that we have heard Arizona has fielded half a dozen phone calls from teams looking to trade it to number 3. And obviously Houston's probably gotten a couple as well for the same exact reason. You got a team that's either wanting to take Will Anderson or Jalen Carter or go and get a quarterback. There's a couple different reasons. So would it be the smart thing for the Indianapolis Colts, instead of having to give up all that capital for the number 1 pick, if the Carolina Panthers take one of those the quarterbacks that you didn't want, maybe trading up and assuring that you go and get the guy that you want, right? That it's the same thing we're talking about with if the Indianapolis Colts should trade up to number 3, right? Now, this is of course saying that the Indianapolis Colts think that's a good idea. They may not deem it as a good idea. They may just think it's okay if they take Will Levis at number 4 rather than at or Anthony Richardson at 4, or any of these guys at number 4, rather than, trading away draft capital and going and getting somebody, right? Like that could be their mindset. We have no idea at this moment, but I think of it from a few different perspectives, guys. Houston has a few reasons why they won't do that or might not do that. Is because why would Houston do it? Why would they trade away number 2 to a divisional rival in the Indianapolis Colts? Now, Houston may not deem that they may not deem any of these other quarterbacks to be worthy of. Maybe say Carolina does go Bryce Young at number 1, and that's the only quarterback, or Carolina takes the one quarterback that Houston did not want to lose out on that number 2 pick. And they said that they didn't want to go with the quarterback outside of the guy that they had. Now, if that's the case, then you would just say, well, they would want to potentially trade back. But even if they didn't think those other quarterbacks were worth it, if the Indianapolis Colts are trading up to go and get somebody, then that clearly means that they find it worth it to go after whichever quarterback it is that they're going to go after. And Houston, just like most other things in the division, you just don't help out divisional rivals in a lot of different ways. Like, even if you don't think those quarterbacks are worth it, the fact that the Indianapolis Colts would think that they're worth it means something to the Houston Texans. And that's why they would say, oh, well, we're just going to keep it because, we don't want you to have the quarterback. We want to keep you away from that, so that way you don't feel like you got something on us. That could definitely be an option. And, we talk about it, and if you're trading it, I mean, is it worth losing out potentially on Will Anderson or Jalen Carter if you go to number 4? Now, clearly, Carolina's going to take one. If you traded with Indianapolis, then they're going to go with a quarterback at number 2. Arizona will take most likely the next best defensive player, unless the Vegas Raiders or somebody else trades into the top 3 to go and get another quarterback. But Arizona most likely will probably end up taking the best defensive player possible, and that's either Jalen Carter or Will Anderson, give or take. And we know Houston, with a defensive-minded coach, will like to have a new defensive weapon that's going to impose their will on opposing offenses. These next upcoming year, he's going to be your next franchise player, is what you're hoping. So, is Houston willing to settle on something like that? Because there's the possibility they may really love Will Anderson, and Will Anderson might be gone before they get to 4. Jalen Carter, maybe the Arizona Cardinals say, now we're going to go with Jalen Carter, despite what some of the stuff that's happened with him over the last month or last 2 months, really. How do they feel about that? So it's very important on how does the rest of the teams work with that. And Houston may not want to take the chance on doing that. Now, of course, if you were willing to do that and move back to number 4, then, how much could you sneak out of Indianapolis, right? Maybe you get an assortment of second rounders over the next several years. Maybe Chris Ballard gives them like 2 seconds and a third or something, like a good amount. I mean, I know it's only moving up 2 picks, but when it comes to a particular player in mind via the quarterback, then clearly we know what they think about the Indianapolis Colts are thinking about quarterback. So you're, of course, going to drive that price up. And, that could be a great thing for Houston, because obviously they have a new coach. They got a bunch of positions that need to be filled, and getting a lot more of those seconds, maybe even acquiring next year's first out of Indianapolis. Maybe that's something that you have to do as well. Houston's already got 2 firsts, maybe moving back 1, and then maybe, taking that second rounder this year from the Indianapolis Colts might be the thing that the Houston Texans deem necessary. Just acquiring all these more picks for their team to try to build, right? And you could still acquire an elite defensive player at number 4. Even if you miss out on Will Anderson or Jalen Carter or something else, you still have elite corner play. You still have either Jalen Carter or Will Anderson that you could get, or you could go a couple different routes if you deem that to be the best option for you. There's just a lot of different ways that Houston can go about it. So it's going to be interesting, guys. Again, they haven't said that they're looking to ship that part out, but they are listening to this. And it's a matter of fact of whether or not Indianapolis could actually do it. Now, I don't know if they'll actually do it or not, but I would say if you're going to only give up a second rounder this year and a second rounder next year for, the chance to go after any of the other quarterbacks and not have to take a chance on somebody else jumping you and doing all that, I would say that's a pretty good deal. But then again, it's what Indianapolis is going to actually do with it. My guess is they don't do anything with it, but it is what it is. We'll just have to see how it goes. But let us know your thoughts in the comments on what you think. Do you think the Houston Texans will trade that number 2 overall pick? And if you do you think they'd actually be willing to trade it to the Indianapolis Colts? Or do you think they'll just laugh in their face and just say there's no way it's going to happen? Let us know your thoughts. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, go Colts.